ladies and gentlemen. I know a lot of college age students are in the Black community. Well, the college campuses that reopened around the country are now the new hotspots. Not only the university or college, but also the town they're in. So many of these college towns are also seeing a big surge. This is some audio that I want you to listen to from NPR.
This is Fresh Air. I'm Dave Davies. As the fall semester begins at colleges and universities, students and administrators are facing unprecedented challenges. We asked Fresh Air producer Sam Brigger to explore the dilemma with the following interview. Here's Sam. As students returned to colleges and universities over the last few weeks, campuses have become the new hotspots for coronavirus outbreaks. The New York Times is reporting that there are over 88,000 cases of coronavirus on college and university campuses across the country. While some schools decided to offer all their courses online, many had ambitious plans to open in person, with various levels of protocols in place to protect students and staff. These included testing practices in dorm rooms set aside for quarantine. But as cases rose among their students, schools like UNC Chapel Hill have had to reverse course and go completely online. Other schools like Iowa State University remain open despite having over 1,000 cases of coronavirus. Student parties are being blamed by campus administrators for the spread of the disease. But should these schools have opened in the first place? We wanted to talk to someone about what's going on at colleges and universities across the country. Our guest, Scott Carlson, is a senior writer for the Chronicle of Higher Education. He's been covering how schools have approached teaching during the pandemic and also about the financial health of colleges and universities. I spoke to him on Monday from his home in Baltimore. Well, Scott Carlson, welcome to Fresh Air.
Thanks for having me on.
So, as I just said, the New York Times is reporting that there are over 88,000 cases of virus across colleges and universities. You spent last spring and summer reporting on how schools were planning to open. Do those numbers surprise you? Did you anticipate there'd be that many cases?
I think a lot of people thought that there would be an explosion of cases on campus. So, the colleges were debating internally whether to come back after the spring semester. And you had administration and boards of governors really pushing for reopening plans in a number of cases, UNC being one in particular, Georgia being another one. And then internally, you had a number of faculty members and students and others who were saying, really, there's no way for colleges to keep students from sort of gathering in the kinds of social situations off campus, on campus, that would lead to a coronavirus spread. So this isn't really surprising to a lot of people that there would be these kinds of, acceleration of cases around coronavirus, given that these colleges are under a lot of financial pressure right now. So the pressure to open, the movement to open was really driven by financial decisions in a lot of cases, and pressure politically, and pressure too from parents and students in particular, who really wanted to have a fall semester of some kind in some cases. But most of the students that I talked to, for example, at UNC, they all knew that the colleges couldn't keep this under control. They just wanted to turn up for a few weeks to see if they could have something of a fall semester experience.
Well, we'll get to some of those pressures in a second. But before that, can you give us a sense of how many schools across the country decided to go online this semester and how many plan to have at least some amount of in-person learning?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The colleges that have chosen to go in person or primarily or fully amounts to about 20%. That's an interesting number to me, because if you looked at this earlier in the summer, the number of colleges that were saying we're going to have an in-person semester was well over half. You have to wonder if that was just projecting confidence about what the fall would be, since so much money was tied up in having an in-person semester. So right now, it's 20% of colleges having some kind of in-person courses. It's 16% doing kind of a hybrid course, which is part online, part in person. A quarter of them are doing education primarily online. 6% are doing it fully online, and some quarter are still trying to figure out what they're going to do.
Do you know if there are any schools that have had big outbreaks but are still trying to keep a semblance of normalcy?
You look at University of Illinois, for example. So University of Illinois has adopted this testing system that's really one of the most celebrated in the country because it's really vast. They're testing the students twice a week on that campus. In fact, one of the first weeks that they came back to school in the fall, they had done on the University of Illinois campus something like 2 to 3% of the tests that were done across the country on that campus.
Wow.
So it's a tremendous number. They also have that hooked up to an app that connects to the test results and then acts like a kind of boarding pass that allows students to get in and out of dorms. And if the test comes back negative, the student gets a kind of screen shot or sort of a screen display that says, hey, you're all clear. That screen display saying all clear allows that student to get into all of the dorm buildings on campus, all of the academic buildings on campus and other buildings on campus, but it's also being adopted by some of the businesses that are in the Urbana-Champaign area. So you can't get into this restaurant, you can't get into this bar unless you flash your pass, your COVID pass, so to speak. The issue is, are people going to stick to the rules? You know, you've read about situations where the students are hacking these notification apps and getting them to show that it's a clear test when it actually isn't.
Wow.
And there they had a spread of the virus because students were not distancing. Maybe this is a result of the widespread testing. Maybe students thought, hey, you know, with all this testing on campus, we can do what we want. But it did end up spreading the virus. So they did lock things down for a while, and they're trying to maintain the school year as it is, thinking that with the kind of testing that they have on campus, they'll be able to control this in the future if they're able to reprimand the students who have been not engaging in social distancing or going to parties and so on.
You visited Ames, Iowa, which is the home of Iowa State University, a school that's had one of the larger outbreaks on its campus. Tell us what you saw there.
So I went around the town for the most part and talked to people there. What you see first is that no one is wearing a mask. Right off campus, you walk into the bars, you walk into the restaurants, everyone is unmasked and sitting in small rooms together. Sure, they're separated. They're supposed to be separated at the tables. They're supposed to be separated at the bars. But, you know, this is really sort of an enclosed environment where, coronavirus can move through the air and infect everyone in the place if someone has the infection. So that was one thing that I saw. The other thing was that I went around to some of the businesses downtown and talked to the business owners, and they're seeing declines of 20 to 30% in their businesses, sometimes 50%. You talk to landlords and they're saying, we have unfilled beds here in town. We can't fill them because people aren't coming. So it ends up being a really difficult situation for the locals, people who, may not be aligned with the kinds of attitudes that are on the campus politically, but they still rely on the economic muscle that the college or university can bring.
So in some ways that must create an interesting discourse between people who have different political beliefs.
Absolutely. I mean, in a place like Ames, you had people who absolutely didn't believe that the coronavirus was real, and yet they still wanted the students to come back, and they were still nervous about how the students would spread that virus through the community.
That's interesting. They didn't believe it was real, and yet they were worried about it spreading.
Yeah. I mean, they raised skepticism about whether it was real or not. But they did. I mean, it's kind of one of these situations where I think the population is a bit schizophrenic about this. I mean, they're not sure whether it's real. They're not seeing direction from the federal government, and they're not seeing direction from public figures. And so, and yet at the same time, the numbers are climbing. It's clear that people are getting sick.
Is size an issue here? I mean, like some of these universities are like small cities unto themselves with tens of thousands of students. You've got faculty, administration staff, maintenance, people working in food service. Are smaller schools just in a better position to handle the pandemic because of numbers?
If you look at the coronavirus tracker that the New York Times has put up for colleges, you can see that it's the big state institutions that have really seen a spike in numbers. And I think that has to do with the anonymity of living on a big state university. You know, it's a tens of thousands of people, and you know, the notion that you can sort of escape into the crowd and not have a kind of responsibility toward the rest of the student population is a little more possible when you're more anonymous on those campuses.
All right. So you pretty much got the big picture. Since they reopened, just like the public schools, you know, many of them had to close and go back to virtual learning, and the colleges are following in that same direction. So you heard what he said. People are still gathering in large crowds, having parties. People are still walking around unmasked on campus, not social distancing, you know, and these are young adults. So, you know, they want to party and have a good time. Even if COVID is going on, they don't care. So now, ultimately, they said 88,000 college students and staff currently have COVID-19. You know, probably the best way to do this is to close the campus and just let everybody go online. But, you know, you have Trump and others that are insisting everything stays open despite the fact that people are getting sick. This is why folks are going to have to use common sense and do what's right for you. For real. But y'all, please tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.